In today's episode of HR Visionaries, we speak to James from Epicor. We talk about how important it is for HR people to build strong relationships with hiring managers. Stay tuned. Welcome to HR Visionaries, where we unlock the secrets of modern HR. I'm Benjamin, your host. Join us as we shed light on today's HR universe with HR leaders and innovators from across the globe. Whether you're an HR pro, a business leader, or just curious about the future of work, this is your shortcut to the forefront of HR innovation. Brought to you by Hire, the AI talent attraction platform. Welcome to the latest episode of HR Visionaries. I'm looking forward to my guest today, James. It's great to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
James, can you tell us a bit about yourself? Who are you?
So I'm James Lafferty. I'm currently the Vice President of Talent Acquisition at a company called Epicor Software. We're a 4,600 person ERP SaaS company. But my background, I'm from Reading in the UK. I now live in Austin, Texas. And so my role at Epicor, I oversee talent acquisition, executive recruiting, talent operations, employer branding, global mobility, a few other things as well. And make sure that we get the right people at the right times for our business.
Right. So you're wearing quite a number of hats, I guess.
That's right.
James, tell us a bit more about, your journey from the UK to Austin, Texas.
Yeah, so I, like most people who are in recruiting and talent acquisition, I fell into it. I didn't grow up dreaming to be a recruiter one day. And so I worked for a couple of different tech staffing companies in the UK. But the last place I was at, I worked there for 10 and a half years, based in Reading, and I ran our direct hire or full-time permanent placement teams. And I started off as a recruiter, ended up as the senior vice president of the US operations, and I moved to the US, got the opportunity to move to the US in 2015 because the business wanted to grow their US presence. And that was really exciting because it was just me to start with. And I grew it to 50 recruiters across Austin, Denver, and Dallas. We worked with hundreds of different tech brands, helping them their staffing challenges.
As a citizen of the UK, you're now based in the US. So how is your work now different compared to working in the UK?
Yeah, so it was it was eye-opening actually, going from the UK to the US. I thought because the languages are the same, I thought recruitment would be the same. I was, pleasantly surprised in the differences, especially in the agency side. The business is a lot more relationship building here, and I loved my time working with within the staffing world, the agency world. But so I made the transition to Epicor in 2021, and it was very different because I was working with hundreds of different companies before, sort of consulting with them, and I had a lot of knowledge of all these companies. I've seen companies do hiring really well, and I've seen companies hire really poorly. And I was like, I've got a lot of knowledge here of I can bring all this to one place. And I, like I said, chose Epicor, and fortunate enough to sort of lead the teams here and bring all of the best practices that I'd seen over the years to one company. Now, you mentioned about working in the US and the US being different. We operate in over 30 different countries. So I had the experience of moving from the UK to the US and having to learn that. But now it's scaled up to understand the different nuances of hiring across 30 different countries. So it was very challenging, or it is very challenging, but it's also very exciting, and I'm learning a lot.
Well, it's perhaps more a philosophical question, but in in teams where you work with 30 different countries or in functions where you work with 30 different countries, how important is it actually from which country you are and in which country you are located?
Yeah, so it's I think that was when I was first joined, and I'll be very open here about this and vulnerable, because when I joined, I was like, I have never hired business developers in Australia or finance professionals in Kuala Lumpur, or like there was so much I didn't know, and I guess I'd spent my entire career knowing exactly how to hire the people we were going after. So I felt like I was constantly playing catch up with what the local laws, the local markets, what's appealing to candidates, the challenges. Like it was, the US term is drinking from the fire hose, right? Because I was like, wow, there's a lot to learn, and I don't know how I'm going to fit all this in my brain. What I found though was I've recruiters in the US, India, Mexico, Europe, and APAC as well in Kuala Lumpur. I found that I didn't need to be the expert everywhere. I needed to have a team of people around me who were the experts. So I really leveraged their experience, their knowledge of the local markets, and networking with people in those places to truly understand more. And once I got over realizing I don't need to be the expert everywhere, but just I need to know who to call on when I get these questions, that's when it kind of unlocked our potential.
Well, James, you just mentioned, okay, you realized, okay, you don't have to be the subject matter expert on everything, but you need a team of people you can trust and you can rely on to be the subject matter experts in their individual markets. Can you tell us a bit more about this decision or this process of realizing that? Because I think for many leaders, in particular when they assume leadership roles, this is not easy to let go of, well, I need to know every detail, to, okay, I now need to make decisions on an educated basis.
Yeah, so it was just consistently and constantly getting feedback from the recruitment teams, hiring managers, leaders in the business. What are you seeing? What are you hearing? What do our competitors do? Or blue sky questioning. If you were to design something, or if I had a magic wand, and solve these issues, what would that look like? And then so I'm a very creative person, when it comes to recruiting, and so I love to think about different ideas or take pieces that I've seen elsewhere and implement them. And also creating a culture of safety. So and what I mean by that is don't be afraid to try new things. And I've always said, so recruiting, we're not brain surgeons, or there's no one, no life on the line or anything like that. So let's try something and let's get feedback. How are we going to measure success? And if it doesn't work, then that's fine, right? But what did we learn, and what can we can make sure that we don't make the same mistakes again? And so it was the approach of failing fast, and then finding things that work, and then finding your unique selling points within the market, right? So don't just copy what other people are doing, because it's just not imaginative, or it's not going to stand out. It's not going to appeal to everyone, but it's about what's uniquely ours that some people might like, and making sure that those some people are the ones that we want.
Okay, I have a few follow-up questions here, because first of all, well, creating a culture of safety, you just said, or at least that what I wrote down. How do you create this culture? Because it sounds great if we have implemented this, but it's not easy, right?
It's definitely not easy, and you have to have that level of foundational trust. And what I mean by that is, working with hiring leaders, or say managers, leaders, executives, and we have the same problem, we have the same goal, and it's to hire the best people as quickly as possible, with the best experience for the candidate, best experience for the hiring manager, best experience for the recruiter. So keep that in mind, and like we want the same thing. And here's some ideas of how we can take it from where it is right now to where we want to go in the future, and for them to understand that if you want to get to a better destination, you have to go through this journey together. And the way in which I describe it is a bit like being on a plane, right? So you get on a plane, and you know you're going to go from A to B. There may be some turbulence, right? But you're still going to get from A to B. And so, and once you get that executive or leader buy-in, that your things are going to be better, but it's not going to be smooth and it's not going to be perfect, then it gives you that space to like understand that, okay, things can improve and we can do things better, but I need to have an open relationship with us. Like, I'm going to give you feedback, you're going to give me feedback, and we're not going to take anything personally. It's in the interest of our common goal of hiring the best people as quickly as possible.
How do you make that possible to not take things personally, given, well, I think particularly in circumstances where people are emotionally very deeply involved, there's always the threat of, well, you mentioned being creative, in particular when you're like, okay, well, I had some very creative ideas that are amazing in my mind. However, being then very open and discussing what is great or what's perhaps not so great about this idea.
It's really hard to not take things personally, because if you're giving your best effort all the time, then when someone critiques it, I mean, it hurts, right? I mean, I take a lot of pride in my work, and I want to do the best job possible. However, I understand that, take a step back, that it's not a personal attack on me, and it's it's something that you have to be able to take feedback in order to improve. You look at any sports person, they would have been given some bad reviews at a game that they played, and you have to take that and learn from it. But I definitely think that you keep that common goal in mind, right? So you have feedback, you take it and you go, right, we're trying to find the best people as quick as possible with the best experience, and know that right, as in me and the hiring manager, or my recruiter and the hiring manager, we have a shared values. And for the recruiters, they want to fill this job. However, there should be no one more motivated to fill the job than the hiring manager, because with a vacancy, they're the ones having to pick up the extra work. They're the ones who can't meet business deliverables. They're the ones' careers are maybe halted by not having this person. So you want to create a culture of recruiting. So it's not just the recruiter's job to do with the recruiting, but it's everyone's job.
The relationship between the recruiter and the hiring manager, how do you make sure this is the most productive relationship possible?
So we look at, I firstly, we make sure that the recruiters have all the appropriate training, and they're efficiently, they have the training to do the job. They have the equipment and the tools to do their job effectively. And then we are constantly getting feedback, right? So whether it's NPS scores, qualitative feedback from hiring managers, and we make sure that if there's any actionable ways to improve, we look at that. It's not just how can recruiters get better, but how can the hiring managers get better? I go back to an interview that I did 15 years ago, and I'm sat there, nervous, and the person interviewing me says, "Why should we hire you?" Right, and I'm like, straight out the gate, and I'm like, and I'm there, sweating and trying to do my pitch and please hire me. Probably a bit desperate at that point. That's long in the past. Now candidates are interviewing the hiring managers as much as vice versa, because a candidate, they're like, do I trust this person to take care of my personal or my professional growth, my development, environment. Yeah, and so it's definitely a two-way thing. So there's a hiring manager maturity model, yeah, that I have in my head, where you have it from hiring managers who are maybe passive aggressive, and I say, like, recruiting doesn't get me good CVs or resumes, and all the way through to talent champions. And they're people who say, recruiting is the core to our success. My career is make or break on the level of person that I bring in. So that's how this is about the training, the tools, and then the experience as well.
You just mentioned recruiting champion. How do you, as a recruiter, educate hiring managers to become recruiting champions?
So frame your strategies around like win-win situations. So it's like, if we do this together, then we will it will take less candidates to make an offer. We'll have more engaged candidates. You get better talent, better diversity. There's so many benefits. So this is what I, as a recruiter, will do for you. And in order to get there, this is what I need from you. So it's a very much this is a partnership, not necessarily just a service.
Okay. Let's dive deeper into that, because I find that incredibly important. A partnership on eye level, right? So to make sure, okay, well, it's not an internal service one books. Creating a trusted relationship does require some time, and sometimes sometimes hiring managers don't have the time. How do you still make sure you can establish that trusted relationship?
Yeah, so I think my default is trust, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I trust people until it's broken, and I would like to make sure that from the initial contact, whether it's a calibration call with the hiring manager, between hiring manager and recruiter, you have to tell the ugly truths sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
The hiring manager might say, I want these 10 skills and I want them to work 6 days a week, and I want them to do this and that. And you have to say, that's not going to happen, right? And you have to manage those expectations. And and sometimes people don't want to hear the truth, but ultimately it saves so much pain in the long run, because I've seen in the past, recruiters say, yes, I can go off and find this, and then come back empty-handed, and then the hiring manager's disappointed because they were expecting that. I think you have to just be really open and honest, and have almost like a consultative approach to this. Again, because you want to have those win-win outcomes.
Well, the openness is obviously very important. However, well, sometimes one gets carried away, or is perhaps a bit, in particular when you start your career, perhaps a bit reluctant in pushing back. How do you educate the people on your team to be open and to push back if things, are too ambitious?
To back everything else, everything up with data, right? Everyone has an opinion. However, we need to make sure that we have the data and control the narrative with the storytelling. And I always like to say that no one puts their kids to bed telling bedtime facts. It's always bedtime stories, right? So I would recommend that if you're looking for, you have a hiring manager who's maybe particularly difficult, then you're struggling, then you might want to have the type of conversations you're having with them is, would you like to hear how hiring managers in this department are filling these jobs in this number of days? Or like the average time to fill is this. Yours is this. Insert number here. Do you want to know what they're doing differently to achieve a different outcome? Or I know you want a top quality candidate. Like, here's what we can do to make it happen, and then you give them the ideas. So, but it's always with the data telling the story, not just giving them numbers and no context, because people jump to their own conclusions.
Well, that also requires that you have the right data available.
Always, like, yeah, if we don't have data, or the data is inaccurate, then we could just argue all day about who's right and who's wrong, right? and and you're going to have your opinions, I'm going to have mine, and that's when the friction comes. Yeah. But if you again have those same common goals and some metrics along the way to understand that you are getting better or improving, then it's a bit like, then you're on the right track. Otherwise, it's a bit like doing a pub quiz with no actual answers. It's just guesses, and then no one's winning.
Indeed. And well, I totally agree with you. And well, data, of course, makes any decision much more objective compared to like subjective opinions.
Yeah.
And I think nowadays we are pretty fortunate that that there is lots of data available, and things becoming clearer. That it kind of leads me to my next question. So over time, recruiting has obviously changed a lot. Well, from being not very data driven to nowadays being very much influenced, or where data plays an incredibly important role. How did you experience this change from very little or not much data being available to like nowadays amazing amount of data points?
Yeah, we've been through, I've been through the journey of not necessarily having the right data at the right time. So how can you make informed decisions if you don't know where think about setting annual goals, right? How do you know where you want to go if you don't know where you are? It's like, trying to you've got no map, right? And so looking at, okay, so you think about what's most important to you or the business, and then what are the milestones that indicate that you are on the successful path, and the key data points, kind of you'd use those. So it's not just the same metric over and over again. It could be dependent on the challenge that we're trying to solve.
This is for me. It's actually quite well. It's absolutely fascinating how recruiting could be successfully done without data being available.
Right, and there's tons of data, right? And you can be a bit either blinded or just drowning in the data, and that's not what we want. I don't want to hand someone a spreadsheet and say figure out what's wrong. I want to but it's using key data points to help you with that story, as I mentioned. And I'll give you an example of working with a particularly difficult hiring manager in the past, and this wasn't at my current company, I want to add. So I said, I'm looking for this skill, like these 5 skills. They have to be based within 5 miles of the office. I want them to accept slightly less than the market rate for salary, and and this long list of requirements, right? And I was like, you're not going to find this. Yeah, exactly. I was like, you're not going to find this. And they were like, well, we've got a great brand name. People will be falling over to work for us. And I was like, okay, I'll tell you what, I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to pull up my LinkedIn recruiter, and I'm going to put let's look at let's do this together. And I'm on my LinkedIn recruiter. I said, let's put in all these skills. Okay, it filters from and the location. It goes from let's say 100,000, then in the location, then every skill you add, it takes off 20,000 people, to the point where there's 2 people in the entire city who can do this job. One of them already works there, and the other one, I'm like, well, I can like, you can message this person, right? And if we get that person, then we're doing a great job. But after I've messaged this person, what do you want me to do? And it was like pretty eye-opening, because then it was like, let's walk backwards, remove this skill. It opens up another 25,000. Okay. And then just what are the most important skills? Basically using this data and real time to like show them what I'm seeing through my eyes, to educate them through the whole process. And it's not just I'm not some resume CV wizard that just creates candidates with a little bit of fairy dust, you know.
Indeed, and well, I really love that example, because it shows like, okay, well, seriously, guys, let's be incredibly transparent. Let's be fully transparent. Okay, here's the data. Okay, let's look at this together. Okay, what other ideas do you have in mind, right?
And often, you know, that's what I like. What else? We've done these things. What else what other ideas do you have? Because, you know, again, if by not hiring this person, it's probably impacting them more than it is me. And once I've gone through all the different ways in which I can do something, and I've walked them through it, and I've shown them like, hey, like we're running out of ideas. What ideas do you have? You know, 9 times out of 10, there's no ideas. They're like, oh, I was thinking you could figure this out. but then that's when it comes into the partnership. You know, if it's not just a partnership, isn't just, I'm going to give you a problem, you figure it out, and then let me know when it's done. That's not partnership. Yeah, exactly. So let's work on this together.
Lovely. Well, you have been around in recruiting for quite some time. What do you think are the 2 or 3 most most interesting developments for you at the moment?
Interesting developments. I think so. The use of AI is going to be, is going to be very big, like depending on the adoption for the company. I definitely don't think it's going to be replacing people, but it's going to make us much more efficient at what we do. I think that's going to be a key point. I know that AI has been around for years and years and years, right? And we've had chatbots and all sorts. Right?
Yeah, and you remember video games like 20 years ago, right? So it was already called the AI, and it was like, okay, a bit of an algorithm.
Yeah, I think that's it's been around for years, so it's nothing new, but it's kind of the new buzzword, right? And so, but I think there's, it's creating. I don't know about your like LinkedIn, but my LinkedIn is just so noisy these days with AI generated messages, and so I think that majority of people have access to ChatGPT or AI and use it in the same way. Now the people who are going to do things really well is being able to get the information, get the data, and then create it in a more personal way that's going to appeal to the person they're trying to target. So you have to stand out from that. But I could talk about AI for a long time, but I think that's definitely one. I think that the market shift within talent over the last few years. You think about the last we're in 2024. The last 4 years, we've had COVID, the war for talent, quiet quitting, rage applying, whatever. We've had the 2023 was like the kind of year of uncertainty within big tech, and I think a lot of big tech lost maybe a bit of the glamour, that it once had. It seemed to be invincible, and so I think now people will maybe approach their job searches or the companies in which they choose slightly differently to what they did in the past, and maybe look for longevity and consistency and more thought about that. So I definitely think that right now there's a lot of people who are maybe not changing companies because of the market, and I feel that once the market starts to pick up, we might start to see some more movement in that respect as well. And I think I always keep thinking about what ifs, so it's good to I think there's a couple of things that I'm sort of keeping tabs on.
Amazing. James, Thank you so much. It was super interesting talking to you. I love the part where you talked about building a relationship with the hiring manager, and well, to be in a creating a partnership rather than like a service level agreement stuff. So therefore, it's pretty cool. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
And all of you guys, thanks a lot for listening in, and see you next time.